mastery from the presentation mastery pathways. John, as you all know, is a president of our club, and John has 25 years of experience in the education system, in the education area, with over 21 years in early childhood education. John, after a live alerting event in 2018, has discovered tuning into kids was undertaking a personal development program. It took until 2023 for John to be able to become a tuning into kids facilitator. Tuning into kids shows parents and carers how to be emotional coaches for their children. Tonight, John is going to share his understandings on the steps of being an emotion coach, which is the basis for the Tuning into Kids program. His evaluator is Toastmaster Vandana, will provide a written and oral evaluation. The Toastmasters, please help me welcome Toastmaster John with a speech title TIK. TIK John Ledger.
I want a lolly. I don't want to go to bed. It's not fair. Ah! Does that sound familiar? Fellow Toastmasters and guests, tonight I will share with you the 5 steps of emotion coaching. In 2019, I attended a personal development program for 20 weeks. And during that time, I read a book called Raising Emotionally Intelligent Children by John Gottman. At the end of the program that I was undertaking, surprise, surprise, they mentioned emotional intelligence, John Gottman, and tuning into kids, or TIK for short. Tuning into Kids is a parenting program which teaches parents the 5 steps of emotion coaching. Tonight I will share those with you. But first, why is emotion coaching important? When I was reflecting on this, emotion coaching is important because, as with every single thing a child learns, they need to learn how to manage their emotions. It is not a straightforward thing. It is something that they have to learn. They need to understand what their emotions are, how they feel, and what they're called. And that is the role of emotion coaching, taking the child step by step by step through the process of understanding, labeling, naming, and describing their emotions. As I mentioned, there's 5 steps in emotion coaching. And I call them my ABCDs. So A, B, C, D, S, with the S on the end. A stands for awareness. You need to become aware that there is an emotion occurring. B is for bonding, seeing that it is a time where you can bond with your child and see it as a teaching opportunity to help them understand their emotions and how they feel and how they can express them. C is for communication. It's you communicating what you are observing, how you can see they are expressing their emotions. D is for describe. And this is when you start to get your older children to describe how that emotion feels, where it sits in their body. And S, it took me a while to think of exactly the right word for S. And I came up with solutions, because the whole process of the S part of emotion coaching is problem solving. So it's helping your child come up with solutions for how they can handle their emotions, how they can manage them next time, what they can do in order to understand their emotions and express them more effectively in future. Before I go on, I was one of these people, as was mentioned at the start. I've been working as a kindergarten teacher for 21 years. Before that, I had a couple of years in a primary school, and the rest of those years was made up with my study. And as a professional, I've always been able to support and resonate with children. But reflecting back now, I know I have had those times where I've gone, there, you'll be fine, it's okay. And the child's beside me, bawling their eyes out, or they've got a sore knee, and dismissing how they're feeling. And this is one of the reasons why we want people to be an emotion coach for their children. Because as soon as we become dismissive about their emotions, try to brush it aside, we're teaching the children that it's not okay to express their emotions. By taking them through the emotion coaching process, we can actually help children to understand that it's okay. Even emotions like anger or fear or sadness, they're okay emotions. They're acceptable. But it's what we do with the emotions that is important. It's important how we handle the emotions that we face. Almost immediately after doing my training to become a facilitator, I saw a change in the way I interacted with children, particularly children when they were having an emotional experience. The first experience was a child who had additional needs, was practically non-verbal. And I was in the kinder, it was the end of the day, the child was building with another child with some blocks, and they built a tower up. It was about a foot and a half high. The other child had left to go home. He put one piece on the top and the whole tower just dropped. And in the past, I would have just ignored it and not understood. But he literally dropped. His energy just went flat. He bolted right around the room, straight over to the teacher's chair, threw himself down, face down, onto the chair, then rolled off it onto the ground. Absolutely hysterical. Now, I didn't go through all the steps, and I'll explain that shortly, but I went through the first 3 steps. Because I was aware, I knew straight away, he was really frustrated, upset, angry that something he was working on had just collapsed. Then I went over and I just held space for him. I just sat beside him, allowed him to cry. And then I started to talk about, it's not fair when you're working really hard and something falls apart, or something you're building and something breaks. It's okay to be upset. I'd be upset too. And this child who never shows affection got up and actually came in for a hug. And I had never been able to get that sort of reaction from him prior to doing tuning into kids. So awareness is absolutely key. As I mentioned before, quite often what we find is when a child starts to have an emotional experience, if it's joy, laughter, they're really excited, people might laugh along with them, but it'll be fine and they'll just let them go. But if it's anger, or if they're crying because something has happened, they're really upset, they're miserable, quite often as adults we start to go, you're okay, calm down, stop crying, all these sort of things. And all we're doing is dismissing their emotions. And part of the reason why we do this is what they call meta emotions, which is how we feel about different feelings. So being aware actually makes us stop and think about how we feel in that moment, interpret our own interpretation of our own emotions, so then we can step aside and understand the child's emotions. We can understand what is happening for that child. And so being aware is actually trying to step into the child's shoes and see what that situation is from their perspective. And once we have that awareness, then we can start the bonding process. And that will be really different for each and every parent and child, or carer and child. For some, that will be a hug. For some, it'll just be sitting near them. But the important thing is making sure that you've got that space for them, and you can be ready to respond when they reach out for you. And it's through that connection that you can start to really give them the understanding that you understand how they feel. And then this brings us to communication. And this is where, as the adult, we bring in all our knowledge of emotional language. And we help the child to understand how they're feeling by communicating what you're seeing. So if they're upset, you talk about how they're upset, what's upset them. You might even use other words. So if they're sad, or they're saying they're sad, you could use words like miserable, distraught. All of this actually helps to work towards increasing your child's emotional language, therefore their emotional intelligence. And it also helps them because with you explaining to them how you are perceiving their emotions, it helps them to understand that everyone experiences emotions differently. And it will also help them to understand that, yes, they have an emotion within them, a feeling, but mum or dad or the teacher or grandpa has their own feeling and feels the emotion in a different way. Make sure that you do talk with your child and really use as much robust language to expand that vocabulary, because that is how they learn to understand the different feelings. To use the example, as I said before, sad. They might use, after you having these conversations, they may use when they've just bumped their knee, yeah, I'm a bit sad because I've hurt my knee. But if the dog gets hit by a car, they might be able to use the word, I'm distraught because my dog is hurt and it's in at the vet clinic, or something like that. By giving them the language, it gives them more options, and so that helps them to understand the the spectrum of the different emotions that they can feel. Now, this is where things are a little bit different. And I'll go back one slide. With really young children 3 years or younger, you're only going to use A, B, and C. Unless your child has already well-developed communication skills, A, B, and C is all you're going to be able to work with. Similarly, if your child has either a speech delay or conditions like autism or something like that, then you're probably just going to focus on A for awareness, B for bonding, and C for communication. Because they're not going to be ready, and they may not even have the language skills to be able to move on to describing. When you're getting your child to describe, you get them to tell you the emotion that they're feeling. But you also get them to tell you where it feels in their body. Do they feel it in their stomach or their chest? Do they feel it in their head? Is it their legs? Their legs feel like they just want to run and run and run. The more you can get your child to explain how they're feeling and where they're feeling, it helps your child to actually understand the emotion at a deeper level. As they gain this understanding, then they will be able to manage their emotions at a greater level than if they didn't have this understanding. So once we've gone through the process of acknowledging their emotion, bonding with your child, communicating your understanding, and then getting them to describe how it feels and describe where the feelings are and what the emotion is, then we can, with the older children, as I just explained before, describing and solutions are for older children with well-developed communication skills who are able to communicate. Get them to start thinking about how they can solve the problem that caused the emotion. Now, the example I used at the start with the little boy and the blocks, this was well and truly out of his area. He was not capable of expressing how he felt, where the emotion was, or to problem solve. But other children who do have those communication skills will be able to say to you, I could start building again. To use the example of the tower falling down, I could put the blocks away and find something else to play with. But the solution may go even further than that. It could be more solutions for how they can handle the emotion itself, not just the situation that caused it. So they could be coming up with solutions like, I could take a couple of deep breaths to calm down. They could suggest that they could come and ask someone for help, or they could reach out for that physical comfort, which we see in step 2 with bonding. That could be the solution that they need to help them just to move through the emotion. Another strategy that I often recommend to children is have a sip of water. Because if you've got a child who is quite upset and you get them to get their water bottle, which usually has a sipper part to drink out of the drink bottle. The act of drinking it out of the bottle actually makes them slow their breath down. And they have to slow their breath down. They can't keep going fast, which is what happens when they get really upset. So that's another solution that I often will bring in for the child. Oops. So we've looked at each of the 5 steps that we go through when we're doing emotion coaching. So with awareness, we become aware that the emotion is happening, and we become curious because we know that we feel the emotions the same way our children do. We see it as a teaching moment and a bonding moment to be able to bond and have that closeness with the child and communicate our understandings so that the child is able to learn more about the different language available in order to describe how they're feeling. Then we encourage the child to describe their own emotions in their own words. We ask them to show us where it feels in their body, as well as how it feels. And then we support them to come up with solutions, not only for the event that triggered the emotion, but how to manage the emotion that they've experienced and what they can do in future in order to manage and express the emotion more effectively in the future. With what I've just shared, this is the first step I'm taking in my journey as a tuning into kids facilitator. I will be extending an invitation to my Toastmasters family and friends, where I'm going to be running a free tuning into kids workshop, which will be run over 6 weeks for 2 hours a week. So if you have found something of interest tonight and would like to know more, I'll be reaching out in our WhatsApp group and you can let me know if you're interested. I just want to leave you with a quote from John Gottman, who wrote Raising Emotionally Intelligent Children, and where the inspiration for tuning into kids came from. Emotion coaching isn't a parenting technique. It's a way of being with your children that empowers them to understand and regulate their own emotions. Thank you all. Back to you, Kiru.
Thank you,